Hello everyone, I'm Patrick Lysaght. Fleeting Structure is a story about fluid flow and crystal growth, two areas where nature really shows off. And it's also about our physical connection with spectacular patterns common throughout nature. As an artist and engineer, I'm interested in transitions, how structure forms as things change, which highlights the notion of entropy and the subtle progression of time. Incredible ripple and wave patterns emerge at the interface between different density fluids, air, water, and sand. Random molecules spontaneously self-assemble into geometrically precise crystal structures, and fractal branching networks develop at microscopic and grand scales in both the living and non-living worlds. How can this be? I hope you enjoy this film that illustrates many of the examples of patterns we share with the world around us. The glass is completely full of two different density fluids. Air is a low-density fluid that pushes sailboats around on the lake and rips roofs off buildings during hurricanes. Although its effects are obvious, most of the time we can't see air on the move. Flames are an interesting way to demonstrate the fluid dynamics and chaotic turbulence of hot air up close. To trace air currents, I soaked wood chips in common chemical solutions and tossed them into my fireplace. The buoyance and agility of fluid flow is captured in thin slices of time as colorful light mingles upward on acrobatic currents of air. The camera freezes the interplay, revealing intricate movement. Adjusting the damper changes the burn rate and posture of streaming flames. I'm playing with fire. Copper compounds emit blue-green vapors. Blues and the abstract truth rings out from sulfur. Calcium throws dense, solid-looking red, orange, and yellow waveforms that elegantly balance delicate blue light. Strontium gives off deep red. Opaque fluidity deftly swerves, granting space depth. blazing colors collaborate in an amazing chemical vapor choreography that will not last and will never repeat. Flames weave and mix unpredictably with precise coordination. Art is in the air. By heating atoms, we can excite their electrons to higher energy. The electrons want to get back to where they were before all the excitement, and do so by throwing out the excess energy as photons of visible light. Color. When excited, every element gives off a unique spectrum of color as their electrons make the quantum leap back to their stable ground state. The green sheets and ribbons of aurora borealis come from atmospheric oxygen leaping back to normal after gaining energy from collisions with charged particles from the solar wind. My perception of color in works of art often transforms simply by learning about the piece. Color is precisely measurable, yet profoundly subjective. Fire ignites a primal music for the eye, rhythmic, ceremonial, ritualistic, and touching something deeply personal within us. Throughout the biosphere, countless species gain an edge in the struggle for survival by flashing flamboyant displays. Wind can also fan the flames of aggression and make fire show its teeth and turn vicious. Due to climate change, drier vegetation now fuels more resilient wildfires. In 2020, more than 4 million acres burned in California, 46 million acres in Australia, and a record amount of carbon dioxide was released as wildfires scorched Siberia and charred more than 4 million acres across 7 Indonesian provinces. 20% of the Brazilian Pantanal, the largest tropical wetland and one of the most biodiverse ecosystems on the planet, was deliberately burned to clear land for agriculture to feed livestock. Being informed is not enough. Fluid, shape-shifting whirls into blackness. The air ballet performed so elegantly by flames has an aggressive, high-density counterpart. As a 19-year-old in the Merchant Marines on the USS Mobile Arctic, the biggest supertanker in the U.S. fleet, taking on a full gale in the Atlantic Ocean changed my life. The ocean raged in 80-foot swells of inverting peaks and troughs. The fury of the sea determines where you can and cannot go. No exceptions. Storm seas must be hit head-on with the bow, or ships roll and capsize. We were repeatedly pounded with thunderous force. Steel railing around the perimeter of the ship was ripped away, as were the starboard lifeboats. At night, arrhythmic jolts of deafening noise deepened my dread. Mind and spirit lunged far beyond terror into bleak emptiness. I expected and accepted death and gained a sense of urgency about life. Sailing to Antarctica with a group of climate scientists in January 2018 involved crossing the roughest seas on the planet. The notorious Drake Passage, better known as the Drake Shake, lies at the convergence of the Atlantic, Pacific, and Southern Oceans, dominated by the Antarctic circumpolar current that whips around the driest, windiest, southernmost continent where it has not rained for nearly 2 million years. Air bubbles trapped in ice cores drilled in Antarctica provide a record of atmospheric carbon dioxide and methane over the last 800,000 years. Carbon tells us the abundance of these gases, and oxygen tells us the temperature. Warmer temperature trends with greater concentrations of greenhouse gases through geologic history. This is settled science with no uncertainty among the experts. The last time carbon dioxide was at the level it is today, 3 million years ago, sea level was 60 feet higher. In a positive feedback loop, as sea ice melts, more of the dark ocean is exposed, which absorbs more heat and melts more ice faster. I was among the protesters outside the White House that forced Richard Nixon to establish the Environmental Protection Agency and sign the Clean Air Act in 1970. I hitchhiked from New York to Washington, D.C. to join May Day protests that helped end the Vietnam War. Activism is a civic duty. Right at the interface between two different density fluids, air shapes the sea into long and short-range order. Air pressures the water surface into long periodic rows, troughs and crests so precise they look like tightly spaced streaks of light and shadow. Low-density air hammers the high-density sea into shape with the exactitude of old-world craftsmanship, rhythmically conveying a subtle mood indigo. I feel a deep connection to the sea that tested me. She is home to deep contemplation, eerily quiescent, sublimely tranquil. The sea is mysterious, foreboding, full of life and impersonal. A passive aggressor slowly and steadily modifying coastlines worldwide. I wish it were otherwise, but she doesn't care. The wind picks on another dense fluid, that slow-motion ocean of desert sand. Our exploration of fluid flow transitions into a hybrid domain where hard-edged quartz crystals flow into spellbinding patterns. Dunes rest quietly during pre-dawn treks in the pristine desert. Low-angle light paints long shadows, accentuating surface features. Tremendous waves terminate at knife-edge ridgelines along dramatic slopes. The ripple effect is beguiling. Wind morphs landscapes into sketches of waves, endlessly erased and redrawn. New compositions drift into view like the rise of nomads within a vast expanse of desolation. Sand dunes embrace without comfort, like Billie Holiday during her battles in the 50s. Silicon and oxygen are the most abundant elements in Earth's crust, and they have a slick little trick. They self-assemble into grains of quartz crystals where the unit cell replicates three-dimensionally into a six-sided prism with a six-sided pyramid at the tip. Our stem cells choreograph the molecular self-assembly of all our tissues and organs. Biology governed by physics and chemistry. Fluid flow, self-assembly, and crystallization occur at the atomic level and on a grand scale in both the living and non-living worlds. All life is made of elements produced in stars and found on Earth. All the elements play by the same rules. We are so directly connected to the universe. Desert sands gather and dissipate along gradients that taper off as they stretch out. The wind induces raised fractal branching networks that add to the surface the way water erosion subtracts. Fractals are physical features that repeat as we zoom in and out. Tiny branches form on larger branches that also form on larger branches, and so on. The most magnetic mineral on Earth, magnetite, adds distinction to ripples. This dark, dense iron oxide settles in troughs, while lighter, clear quartz grains are lifted by the wind and accumulate in crests. The iron that oxidizes and turns Navajo sandstone rusty is also taken up in the foods we eat, forming the hemoglobin in our blood that carries oxygen from our lungs through dense fractal branching networks to service all our cells. I feel a strange mix of elation and uncertainty as I wonder about the meaning of my life. How can random particles suddenly self-assemble and begin interacting with the environment? Solitude fosters a measured pace. Are these chemical interactions beyond our control? Odd tranquility lulls into serene, meditative dwell time. Wind is not alone. Water also makes a big impression on sand. There are only a few places on Earth where a stream flows in rhythmic waves on sand. Several modes of volatility promptly take center stage. Unlike patterns of ripples that decorate dunes, these features originate in chaos. Turbulence is the most extreme and the most common form of fluid flow. A stream with smooth, laminar flow depends on the viscosity or density of the water to suppress instabilities. When a section of the stream warms up in the sun, becomes less dense, and starts to move faster than neighboring sections of the stream, turbulence kicks in. Changes in flow velocity launch interacting eddies and vortices. Leonardo had a lifelong fascination with water turbulence, which he compared to the flowing structure of spirals and swirls in human hair. Pincushion displays move in clusters with the current. Sand and stream conspire to organize interactive networks of cells. When the width of the cells closely matches the depth of the stream, turbulence kicks in, causing high-frequency fringes within individual cells. At the interface between these different density fluids, sand may congregate into an incredible 3D still life, as if the vibrant stream suddenly stopped and abruptly vanished. A stream of consciousness artfully unfurls with reverential silence in the hinterland. Complex and chaotic, impulsively dynamic. This is how turbulence becomes a world-class sculptor of meticulous precision and borderless imagination. Nature exposes herself in alluring ways. Surface tension emerges when the stream stops and settles undisturbed into the sand with a brief sheen. Flowing water hones exquisite reliefs of ambiguous scale, like a virtuoso animator wandering through the Badlands. Silicon and oxygen come together to form crystal grains, and grains come together to form larger structures. The physical resolution of these fleeting sand sculptures is limited by the grain size. Fine silt yields sharp lines and clean contours. The struggle for equality is fought in a density barrier tug-of-war at the stream-sand interface. Tiny grains manipulate into invigorated resistance where animated figures fluctuate under restraint. The history of the world is written in blood by societies of subjugation and slavery. Horrible atrocities have been committed in the name of economic growth. Perseverance against tough odds is carved into the sand that stands its ground. Surface tension rises in the sand as a muted cry for justice. The emotional depth of social unrest penetrates the long, dark silence. Being informed is not enough. Divisions within the stream hone narrow islands that continuously rise and fall, slapped around by the current like facts on conspiracy theory websites. The stream recedes only to return with a new vision, continuously reiterating unspoken accounts of social disparity. Wind and water, tireless masters of change, follow a long-standing tradition. Wisdom lurks in cliffside erosion, where change comes slowly and visiting hours are brief. Self-organization and the laws that govern the fluid flow of air, water, and sand apply equally to plants and animals. An aspen leaf gets the iron needed to produce chlorophyll, highlighting a fractal branching network evolved to service the entire leaf. The natural flow of a stream sculpts countless variations of additive and subtractive, dendritic, plant-like patterns in sand. Efficiency sets boundary conditions for fluid flow. Fractal branching networks are streamlined. Nature is thrifty, a master of restrained innovation. She does more with less energy and avoids the needless. Life develops around fractal vascular networks established to efficiently transport nutrients and oxygen. Our lungs, blood vessels, circulatory, respiratory, neural, and renal systems are examples of self-similarity, where each tiny part is a replica of the whole. We are an amazing collection of elements obeying the laws of nature, participating briefly in a process that has been going on without us for billions of years. There is no way to detach from the flow. Form follows function. Dead or alive, fractals are frugal. Seeing is believing, or so we've been told. We expect the sun to be overhead, not shining up from below, so we perceive light as being on the top of convex objects that stick out and project their shadows downward. When the shadow is on top of a convex object, a concave, convex optical illusion occurs. People with schizophrenia are not fooled by the illusion. Expectation does not overrule the implausible input from their eyes. Inverting an image of uneven topography may reveal overlooked structural details pertaining to depth. painting irregular surface contours with colorful light also enhances unsung physical features. Our eyes send light and contrast signals to our visual cortex. The information is converted to electrical signals that travel through dense, branching networks of neurons. This is how our cells communicate with each other and how we communicate with each other locally and globally. Our brain compares the image from our eyes with past experience to interpret what we see without having to think about it. This helps us quickly navigate the complexities of everyday life. Here's the crazy part. Our perception of structure is beyond our control. Even when we know what we are seeing is incorrect, we cannot overrule it and avoid the illusion. Who's in charge around here? Saturated sand eventually dries and begins waltzing with the wind again in a perpetual cycle. Randomness and order mingle under a quiet, creeping shroud, calm and peaceful. Sheets harmoniously arise as air brushes sand into smoother shapes. Art doesn't pour out of the paintbrush onto the canvas when I sit in front of an easel, and it doesn't suddenly take shape when I put the hammer and chisel to a block of alabaster. Art is real and imaginary life experience rendered from abstract concepts into color and form. Art is a way of seeing and expressing. Science is a way of understanding and explaining. Art and science share a broad platform of innovation that appreciates the beauty of simplicity. Both endeavors must push the envelope and contribute something new to be relevant. Sculptors and engineers may grapple with similar sets of problems, yet defining a system typically excludes how we feel about it. Science is self-correcting, but has no rules for dealing with emotions. Logic tells us free will is an illusion, that our neurons abide by chemical reactions beyond our control. Emotion says otherwise. Curiosity gives rise to creativity. Art is personal, open to individual interpretation, in the eye of the beholder. That can't happen in science. The objective pursuit of truth, the right answer. Science is under attack. Knowing right from wrong begins with a quest for truth, and science is the open path that welcomes free and fair debate. Truth should never reach across the aisle to bargain on the facts. The halfway point between the truth and a lie is not the truth. Groups that operate outside the censure of truth pose a serious threat. Fact-checking is not enough. Critical thinking shuts down in people who blindly follow deceitful oligarchs chanting, "My country, right or wrong, love it or leave it." This is a case of the empty pail making the most noise. Being informed is not enough. The greenhouse of misinformation depends on fear and apathy for germination. The streaks and smears of mixing gradients at the interface between fluid granular materials constitutes another physical transition that may organize abruptly or as a seamless gradient, the way jazz players maneuver between musical modes. Nature does what's easy. As things change, there are many more ways to be disordered than ordered, so things tend toward disorder or increasing entropy. Entropy is a measure of randomness, how mixed up a system may be and how uncertain we are about that system. The Big Bang was a low entropy event, and entropy keeps increasing as the universe keeps expanding and cooling. Time is a one-way street. We can't go back and undo the past, but we are continuously finding new evidence of how we got here. We're not just made of the same stuff and form many of the same patterns found on Earth. All life, every living thing, shares DNA that can be traced back nearly 4 billion years to a last universal common ancestor. It seems altogether fitting that life emerged from geochemistry. We have so much in common with Earth. In a humbling and poetic way, we are playing our part in a beautiful mystery. From our genetic makeup to surviving 5 mass extinctions, we owe our existence to an incredible lineage of random events. Species need to adapt in order to survive, and random errors in reproduction generate variation, mutations that may be advantageous. Whether species adapt or go extinct is a game of chance that depends on random processes. I'm gaining a deep appreciation for my position within the superstructure of an interconnected living biosphere. Now, how cool is that? Perhaps the most spectacular example of how things change is triggered by freezing temperatures and emerges as an exquisite blend of art and engineering. Fractals form the backbones of frost crystals that sprawl out with awesome precision across my windshield in the mountains of New Mexico. When water vapor condenses on the side of a cold beer bottle, we get dew. When water vapor condenses in clouds, we get rain. When water vapor bypasses the liquid phase and condenses directly into solid ice, we get frost on windshields and snowflakes in clouds. Frost on my windshield is not frozen dew, the same way snowflakes are not frozen rain. Crystal growth has a strong dependence on temperature and humidity. Christmas tree and parabolic features grow rapidly, while tropical leaves and feathers assemble slowly, close to the freezing point. No wonder we refer to the growth of crystals as though they are living organisms. Like the positive feedback loop that melts polar sea ice faster and faster, bumps and scratches that stick out of frost have a higher probability of attracting random water vapor molecules. The longer the branch, the faster it grows. Light gets bent traveling through ice, which magnifies the red hood of an old Subaru, adding color to pine tree fractals. Frost may be decorated with hexagonal ice ornaments that form like exclamation points at the ends of many frost statements, easily seen without magnification. Another wonder of the natural world, hidden in plain sight. Backlit photos appear as negative ice density maps. Leafy ferns reach out from the perimeter of ice islands that gradually coalesce into planar structures. The spontaneous formation of spectacular frost crystals seems to contradict our understanding of entropy in a world of increasing disorder. What's going on? If we film a wine glass shattering and play it in reverse, we see random pieces of glass spontaneously self-assemble into a crystalline wine glass. We know that doesn't happen in real life, yet incredibly precise structures do self-assemble from utter randomness, as if time is flowing in reverse. So, how can random water vapor molecules suddenly condense into precise crystals that seem to buck the trend toward increasing disorder? For the molecules involved, crystallization is indeed very low entropy, but there's no free lunch and time does not flow backwards. The process of forming well-ordered structures like stars and frost and people gives off heat to the environment, resulting in a net increase in entropy. That no good arrow of time won't let a moment pass without increasing entropy. I try to capture this paradox of exquisite structure spontaneously emerging in a world of increasing randomness and disorder. My images represent Lyrical Portraits of Entropy. Odd symmetry highlights the radiance of midnight sunlight upon a mosaic of Arctic ice floes, glimmering with the scintillation of stealthy rays during the summer solstice of 2017. A spectacular kinetic ice sculpture garden extends to the horizon in every direction. Solitude's pensive gaze shifts inward as ice gleams in stretched out striations. Polar bears roam across their diminishing habitat. Pristine wilderness enables me to cut through the clutter of modern life, to identify transient physical features we share with the planet. Human behavior is disrupting the critical balance between Earth, the sea, the atmosphere, and all life. Being informed is not enough. Fleeting images tell a story of time transporting us to a worrisome future. But what can we do about it? Corporations craft the laws. Protests, boycotts, and sanctions will teach them a civics lesson about honesty, decency, and denial. Corporations will do the heavy lifting when their bottom line is in the red. We are calendars, recording time as we age over the course of years and decades. Life is a dynamic, temporary process marked by aging and deterioration. Entropy casts a dark shadow in a minor key. More than 8 billion people will die in the next 100 years. Since the impact of our lives will not likely be long-lasting, perhaps finding meaning in fleeting structures we share with the planet will just have to do.